Right, before we start, I need to say something. I think you're wrong about this whole risk register thing.
Excuse me?
Small businesses don't need formal risk registers. That's enterprise stuff. It's overkill.
Are you being serious right now?
Completely. We're about to spend 40 minutes telling listeners they need to create formal risk registers when most of them are just trying to keep the lights on. It's unrealistic.
You know what else is unrealistic? Thinking you can run a business without knowing what's going to kill it. The government survey just dropped. Only 27% of UK businesses have a board member responsible for cybersecurity, down from 38% 4 years ago. We're going backwards whilst ransomware attacks doubled.
That doesn't mean they need bureaucratic risk registers.
No, what it means is boards are negligent, and we're going to have this argument properly.
Fine, let's do it.
Welcome to episode 31 of the Small Business Cybersecurity Guy. This is going to be interesting.
He's the guy with the plan for your online life. Keeps your data safe, cuts through the strife. Small biz owners, yeah, this is your guide. Cyber threats, beware, no place to hide. The Small Business Cybersecurity Guy. Guarding your world with a sharp eagle eye. Tips and tricks to keep your systems tight. Stay secure, stay strong in the digital fight.
I'm Noel Bradford, and sitting across from me is Graham Faulkner, who's apparently decided that governance doesn't matter.
That's not what I said.
You literally just said risk registers are overkill for small businesses.
I said formal risk registers might be overkill. There's a difference.
There really isn't. And over the next 40 minutes, I'm going to explain why. Moven's away, which means she can't moderate this discussion. So we're going to settle this properly. Here's what we're covering today. Why risk registers exist, why cyber risk belongs in them, what happens when boards ignore this responsibility, and how to actually implement one without it being some massive bureaucratic nightmare.
And I'll be arguing that most small businesses have bigger problems than creating formal documentation they'll never look at.
See, that attitude right there is exactly why 43% of businesses got breached last year. Because people think documenting risk is bureaucracy instead of recognizing it as survival planning.
Or maybe they got breached because of technical failures, not missing paperwork.
Those technical failures happened because nobody at board level was managing the risk, which is exactly what risk registers do.
Prove it.
Challenge accepted. Let's begin. Right, Graham, simple question. If I asked you what the top 5 risks are to your business right now, could you list them?
Of course I could. Cash flow, losing a major client, key staff leaving, market competition, regulatory changes. Done.
And where does cybersecurity sit on that list?
Honestly, it doesn't. It's something we're aware of, but it's not a top 5 risk.
There it is. That's the problem. You've just demonstrated exactly what the NCSC Board Toolkit research shows. Cybersecurity ranks as a theoretical priority for directors, but only 31% of businesses actually assessed their cyber risk last year. You're aware of it, but you're not managing it.
Because we're managing actual business risks. The things that'll kill us next week, not hypothetical attacks that might never happen.
Hypothetical? 43% of businesses got breached last year. That's not hypothetical. That's coin flip odds. If you're sitting in a board meeting thinking hackers won't bother with you, you're delusional.
Okay, that's harsh.
It's accurate. And here's where risk registers come in. A proper risk register forces you to document all your risks in one place. Not just the comfortable ones you like thinking about, all of them, including cybersecurity.
But why does it need to be formal? Why can't the board just discuss risks in meetings like we do now?
Because informal discussions don't create accountability. They don't assign ownership. They don't track whether anything actually gets done. And they definitely don't survive when the person who knows everything leaves the business or gets hit by a bus.
That's a bit dramatic.
Is it? I've worked with hundreds of small businesses over 4 decades in this industry. You know what the common pattern is? Everything lives in someone's head. The owner knows all the risks. The owner knows all the workarounds. The owner knows where all the bodies are buried. Then the owner goes on holiday and the whole place falls apart.
That's a management problem, not a risk register problem.
It's both. and a risk register fixes both. Let me give you a real example. Small manufacturing firm, about 30 staff. They came to me after their accountant suggested cyber essentials for a government tender. Fine, we helped them get certified. During that process, I asked to see their risk register. Blank stares all round. They didn't have one. Okay, do you have a business continuity plan? No. What would happen if your systems went down for a week? More blank stares. These weren't stupid people, Graham. They'd run a successful business for 15 years, but they'd never formally identified and documented their risks. Everything was informal. Everything was in the owner's head.
What happened?
6 months later, ransomware hit them. They lost access to their production scheduling system and couldn't bill clients because the invoicing system was encrypted. They had to pay the ransom because their backups didn't actually work when they tested them. So it cost them £45,000 direct. They lost 3 major clients who couldn't wait. The whole affair nearly bankrupted the firm.
And you're saying a risk register would have prevented that?
Yes. Because if they'd had a risk register, ransomware would have been documented as a high likelihood, high impact risk. That documentation would have led to someone being assigned responsibility for managing it. That person would have asked questions about backups. Those questions would have revealed the backups weren't tested. Testing would have happened. The attack would still have happened, but recovery would have been hours instead of weeks, and the business would have survived.
That's a lot of assumptions.
No, that's how governance works. The risk register isn't magic. It's the governance mechanism that forces these conversations to happen.
But you're talking about one example. That doesn't prove risk registers prevent breaches.
You're right. It proves risk registers create the accountability structure that leads to proper controls being implemented. The NCSC says this plainly. Good cybersecurity is about managing risks. You cannot manage risks you haven't identified and documented. That's not opinion. That's basic governance.
Okay, but most small businesses barely have time to serve customers. You're expecting them to maintain formal risk registers as well?
No, I'm expecting their boards to take governance seriously. This isn't about creating bureaucracy. It's about having a single document that lists what could kill your business and what you're doing about it.
Single document? Have you seen enterprise risk frameworks? They're massive.
Enterprise risk frameworks are massive because enterprises are complex. Small business risk registers can be a single spreadsheet with 8 columns. You can set one up in an afternoon. Don't let perfect become the enemy of good enough.
What 8 columns?
Risk description, likelihood, impact, risk level, current controls, risk owner, additional actions needed, review date. That's it. That's your minimum viable risk register.
And this works?
It works because it forces the conversation. Once you document that ransomware is high likelihood and high impact, somebody has to explain what you're doing about it. If your current controls are just, we have antivirus, and your additional actions list is empty, that's a board decision. You're formally accepting that risk. Fine, but you can't claim you didn't know.
I'm still not convinced this is necessary for most small businesses.
Then let me ask you something. If your business burned down tomorrow, would your insurance company just pay out? Or would they investigate whether you'd taken reasonable precautions?
They'd investigate. Fire exits, alarms, sprinklers.
Right. And if they found you deliberately removed the fire alarms to save money, what happens?
They'd refuse the claim.
Exactly. Now apply that to cyber insurance. If you get breached and your insurer discovers you had no risk assessment, no documented controls, no assigned responsibility, no security training, what do you think happens?
They refuse the claim.
Or they pay out once, then refuse to renew your policy. Either way, you're on your own. And here's the fun part. Cyber insurance premiums keep climbing because insurers are tired of paying for preventable incidents. The government survey found 62% of small businesses now have cyber insurance, up from 49% last year. Great, but if you can't demonstrate you've taken reasonable precautions, that insurance might be worthless.
What counts as reasonable precautions?
Having a risk register that shows you've identified cyber threats and implemented proportionate controls. It's not just good governance, it's an insurance requirement and potential legal protection.
Legal protection?
Legally speaking, UK directors already have duties under the Companies Act to exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence. And courts are becoming more willing to scrutinise director conduct across all areas of governance, not just cyber. We've seen this with ESG issues, for instance. The real shift is happening in the US, where the FTC and SEC have brought cases against individual directors and CISOs for cyber failures. The UK hasn't followed that path yet, but legal experts think it's coming. The Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, working through Parliament, will tighten requirements for larger organisations managing essential services, which increases the pressure on boards to demonstrate proper oversight. For small businesses, you're not covered by that bill yet. But here's the thing, your existing director duties already require you to manage material business risks. With 43% of businesses getting breached annually, can you honestly argue cybersecurity isn't a material risk?
Probably not.
Definitely not. And courts are starting to agree. We're seeing the first cases where directors are held personally liable for cybersecurity failures. The Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, working through Parliament right now, will make this explicit for larger organisations. Small businesses aren't covered yet, but regulation always starts big and works down.
So small businesses have a window to get this right before it becomes mandatory?
Exactly. Right now it's best practice. Soon it will be legal requirement. Smart boards are getting ahead of this.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this matters. But I still think you're underestimating how resistant boards will be to creating these things.
Oh, I'm not underestimating anything. I know exactly why boards resist risk registers. And that's what makes me angry.
Right, why do boards resist risk registers if they're this important?
3 reasons, and none of them are good ones. Ignorance, avoidance, and outright delusion.
That's going to upset people.
Good. They should be upset. Let's start with ignorance. Most small business boards genuinely don't know risk registers exist. They think risk management is something massive corporations do. Enterprise stuff. Not relevant to them. They're wrong, but they don't know they're wrong.
So it's an education problem?
Partly. But here's where it gets worse. Even when you educate them, you hit avoidance. Creating a risk register forces boards to confront uncomfortable truths about how they've been running the business. Like the fact they've been operating on luck and hope rather than actual strategy.
That's pretty cynical.
It's realistic. Once you document risks, somebody has to be responsible for them. You can't keep saying cybersecurity is everyone's problem because that means it's nobody's problem. The moment you create a risk register, you have to assign owners. Graham, you're responsible for supplier risk. Sarah owns operational risk. James has cyber risk. Now James actually has to do something about it, or explain to the board why he's not doing anything. Much easier to just avoid creating the register in the first place.
You're saying boards deliberately avoid accountability?
Not consciously, but yes. I've sat in board meetings where people argued against creating risk registers because it would create too much work. Think about that statement. They're saying the work of protecting the business is too much work. What exactly do they think the board's job is?
Managing the business?
Right, and you can't manage what you don't measure. Which brings us to delusion, the most dangerous reason. Many boards operate on pure delusion about their risk profile.
Such as?
We're too small to be targeted. Ransomware doubled last year. Criminals use automated tools that don't care about your size. We don't have anything worth stealing. You've got customer data, financial records, operational information, and possibly access to your client's systems. That's plenty. Our IT person handles security. Dave from IT is one person. He goes on holiday, gets sick, quits. Then what?
These are common beliefs, though.
These are comforting delusions. Creating a risk register forces you to examine these beliefs with evidence, and the evidence says they're rubbish. Look at the government numbers. 43% of businesses breached last year. Only 27% have board responsibility for cybersecurity. Only 31% did risk assessments. Medium businesses get hit at 67%. Large businesses at 74%. This isn't theoretical, this is happening right now. And yet board engagement is declining. Not increasing, declining. That's not a market failure, that's a governance failure. It's boards choosing comfortable delusion over uncomfortable reality.
How do you break through that delusion?
You make it personal and immediate. Stop talking about general threats. Show them what happens to businesses exactly like theirs. Remember our reverse benchmarking episode? Same principle. Don't tell boards about abstract cyber risk. Show them the holiday park that got hit with ransomware during peak season and had to operate cash only. Show them the manufacturing firm that paid £45,000 and still lost 3 major clients. Make it visceral, make it real. Because right now, cyber risk is abstract for most boards. Some vague, bad thing that happens to other people. Risk registers force it to become concrete.
Walk me through what good risk register practice actually looks like for cybersecurity.
Simple structure. Each risk needs a clear description. What's the threat? Ransomware attack, phishing compromise, third-party breach, insider threat, whatever. Be specific. Then set the likelihood that based on evidence, not feelings. The government says 43% of businesses get breached annually. That's a high likelihood for most businesses. Don't guess, use data. Impact assessment. What actually happens if this occurs? Systems down for a week? Customer data leaked? Regulatory fines? Reputational damage? Lost revenue? Be brutally specific with numbers. Your current controls. What are you doing right now to prevent this? Backups? Multi-factor authentication? Training? Security software? List everything, honestly. The risk level is calculated from likelihood and impact combined. This tells you which risks need immediate attention versus which ones you can monitor. Name the risk owner. Who's specifically responsible for managing this risk? An actual named individual, not the CIO or the IT team, and for the love of all things you hold dear, never everyone. Create an action plan. What else needs doing? When? Who's doing it? No vague statements. Concrete actions with deadlines. And finally, add a review date. When will you check this again? Quarterly minimum for high risks. This isn't create it and forget it.
That's actually straightforward.
Of course it is. This isn't rocket science. It's systematic thinking applied to risk. But it requires discipline, which is exactly what makes boards uncomfortable. Because once you document everything, the gaps become obvious.
And boards can't hide behind ignorance anymore.
Exactly. Once you document that ransomware is high likelihood and high impact, and your only control is, we have antivirus, you've got 3 choices. You can accept the risk formally. You can mitigate it with better controls. You can transfer some of it through insurance. Or you can avoid it entirely by changing how you operate. But you have to choose. No more hiding behind, we'll deal with it if it happens.
Hold on. You just said 4 options. Accept, mitigate, transfer, avoid. Walk me through those because I'm not clear on the difference.
Right, this is crucial. These are the 4 ways you can respond to any documented risk. You can choose to accept, which means you've looked at the risk, you've assessed it, and you've decided you can live with the consequences if it happens. You document that decision. The board formally says, we accept this risk. That's fine, as long as it's an informed decision. You can transfer it, which means you're shifting some of the financial consequences to another party. Cyber insurance is the classic example. You're transferring the cost of recovery, though you can't transfer things like reputation damage or customer trust. Insurance won't fix those. You might decide to mitigate it. That means you're implementing controls to reduce either the likelihood or the impact. This is your standard security work. Installing MFA to reduce the likelihood of account compromise. Implementing backups to reduce the impact of ransomware. You're making the risk smaller and more manageable. And finally, you might opt to avoid the risk, meaning you're eliminating the risk entirely by not doing the activity that creates it. If your biggest risk is storing customer credit card data and you can't secure it properly, you avoid the risk by not storing it at all. Use a third-party payment processor instead.
So every risk in your register needs one of those 4 responses?
Exactly. Accept, transfer, mitigate, or avoid. You document which one you're choosing and why. That's how boards make informed decisions instead of just hoping for the best.
Okay, I'm coming around on this, but I still think most boards don't want to hear it.
Most boards don't want to hear lots of things until they're forced to, which is exactly what's coming. Let's talk about something most businesses get completely wrong. The difference between compliance and risk management.
Aren't they the same thing?
No. And that misunderstanding is killing businesses. Compliance means you've met a standard. Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, GDPR requirements, whatever. You've ticked the boxes. You've passed the audit. Congratulations, you're compliant. Risk management means you've identified your actual threats specific to your business and you're actively managing them. Completely different exercise.
But surely being compliant means you're managing risk.
Not necessarily. And this is where boards get dangerously confused. The government's own research proves this. Businesses can be fully compliant with every framework and still get absolutely destroyed by attacks.
How?
Because compliance frameworks are generic. They tell you what most businesses need as a baseline. They don't tell you what your specific business needs based on your unique risk profile, your industry, your clients, your supply chain, your particular vulnerabilities. Let me give you the classic example we've covered before. Target had every compliance certification imaginable. SOC reports, PCI compliance, the works. Still got breached through an HVAC contractor who had network access. 40 million credit card numbers stolen, $162 million in losses, CEO resigned, CIO resigned, board chairman resigned. Compliance wouldn't have prevented that. Risk management would have. Because proper risk management would have identified third-party vendor access as a major threat and implemented appropriate network segmentation and access controls.
So risk registers catch what compliance frameworks miss.
Exactly. And here's where the governance gap becomes dangerous. UK company directors have legal duties under the Companies Act. They must exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence. They must act in the company's best interests. They must consider likely consequences of their decisions. Now ask yourself, if cyber attacks hit 43% of businesses annually, and a breach could cost thousands of pounds more than the mitigating controls cost, can directors honestly claim they've exercised reasonable care by ignoring cyber risk?
Put like that, no.
Right, and here's what really bothers me about this. The NCSC has made this incredibly easy. They've published comprehensive board toolkits, detailed risk management guidance, sample questions for boards to ask, template approaches. It's all free. It's all written in plain English, not technical jargon. They've done everything except personally visit every boardroom in the country and force people to read it. And yet board engagement is dropping. That's not a knowledge problem. That's a willingness problem. Boards don't want to do the work.
Maybe they genuinely don't understand the consequences?
Then they're not qualified to be directors, because the consequences are everywhere. Let me walk you through what actually happens when boards ignore cyber risk. First scenario, professional services firm, no risk register. Ransomware hits. 3 months of billable work lost because backups weren't tested properly. Pay the ransom. Still lose 2 major clients who no longer trust them. Nearly bankrupts the firm. That's preventable with a risk register identifying backup testing as a critical control. Second scenario, retail business gets breached. Customer payment data exposed. ICO investigation. £100,000 fine for inadequate security. Directors had to explain to the ICO why they had no risk assessment, no security policy, no staff training. Their defense? We thought our payment processor handled security. ICO didn't care. GDPR makes data controllers responsible regardless of processor arrangements. Third scenario, manufacturing firm about to lose a major contract because the client now requires Cyber Essentials Plus. They can't get certified because their security is a mess. Takes 6 months to sort out. Client moves to a competitor who already had certification. Contract worth £500,000 annually. Gone. Risk register would have identified client requirements as a business risk months earlier.
So risk registers aren't just about preventing attacks. They're about protecting business relationships, regulatory compliance, insurance coverage, everything.
Right. Risk registers are about comprehensive business risk management. Cybersecurity isn't a technical issue in isolation. It's a business issue that affects every part of your operation. Revenue, reputation, regulatory compliance, client relationships, insurance, legal liability. Everything connects. And here's the controversial bit that I know will upset people. If your board doesn't understand this fundamental truth, you have the wrong board.
That's going to make people angry.
Good, because this isn't optional anymore. We're not talking about nice-to-have best practices. We're talking about fundamental governance responsibilities that directors are legally obliged to fulfill. Directors who ignore cyber risk in 2025 are failing in their duties. Period. Full stop. And when the breach happens, when the ICO comes knocking, when the insurance refuses to pay, When the clients walk away, saying we didn't know isn't a defense. The NCSC has published guidance. The government runs free cybersecurity programs. The statistics are public. The information is everywhere. Ignorance is now a choice, not an excuse.
What does good board-level cyber risk governance actually look like then?
4 non-negotiable elements. First, cyber risk must be in your main board risk register. Not hidden away in IT documentation, not buried in some technical report nobody reads. Right there alongside financial risk, operational risk, reputational risk. Same visibility, same priority. Second, you need named board-level responsibility. One specific director owns cyber risk. They're accountable. They report to the full board quarterly minimum. They cannot delegate this responsibility downward to IT and wash their hands of it. Third, the board must define clear risk appetite. They formally decide how much cyber risk they're willing to accept. That decision gets documented. It guides all security investments and trade-offs. No more ad hoc decisions based on whoever shouts loudest. Fourth, regular review and testing. You don't create the risk register once and forget it exists. You update it quarterly. You test your controls to verify they actually work. You run scenarios. You adapt as threats evolve. That's good governance. Anything less is hoping for the best whilst pretending you're being responsible.
And most businesses aren't doing this?
Most businesses aren't even close, which directly explains the statistics we keep quoting. 43% breach rate, 27% board responsibility, 31% risk assessments. These numbers are causally connected. When boards don't take cyber risk seriously, organizations don't take it seriously. When organizations don't take it seriously, they get breached. When they get breached, boards suddenly care. But by then, it's far too late.
Okay, I'm convinced this is necessary, but you need to give me the practical path forward, because I'm starting to worry about how much work this actually involves.
That's exactly what we're covering next. And it's going to surprise you how simple it actually is.
Right, I'm sold on why risk registers matter. Now, convince me this isn't going to be some massive undertaking that small businesses can't actually manage.
It's not. Start dead simple. Minimum viable risk register for cybersecurity. One spreadsheet, 8 columns like I described earlier. You can set this up in 2 hours if you're focused.
2 hours?
2 hours. Column 1, risk description. Write down your top 5 cyber threats. Ransomware attack, phishing compromise, data breach, third-party vendor incident, key person dependency. Just write them down in plain English. Column 2, likelihood. Use the government statistics we keep quoting. 43% of businesses get breached annually. That's high likelihood in anyone's book. Don't invent your own ratings. Use evidence. Column 3, impact. What actually happens if this occurs? Be ruthlessly specific. Systems down for 72 hours means lost revenue of £15,000. Customer delivery delays, potential contract breaches. Write the actual consequences. Column 4, risk level. High likelihood times high impact equals critical risk that needs immediate attention. Medium likelihood times low impact equals monitor but don't panic. Simple matrix. Column 5, current controls. What are you doing right now? Daily backups to cloud, antivirus on all machines, MFA on email. List everything honestly, even if it's not much. Column 6, risk owner. Actual name of a real person, not IT team or everyone or to be determined. Graham owns this risk. Put your name on it. Column 7, additional actions needed. What else should you be doing? Test backup restoration monthly, implement MFA on VPN, schedule security training for all staff. Be specific about next steps. Column 8, review date. When will you check this risk again? Quarterly minimum for high risks. Put an actual date in the calendar. That's it. That's your risk register. 2 hours of focused work. Not complicated, just systematic.
And this actually makes a difference?
It makes a massive difference because it forces real conversations instead of vague hand-waving. Let me walk through what happened with a real business that did this. Professional services firm, 25 staff. After they'd listened to this podcast series, actually, they created their first risk register, identified ransomware as high risk, Their current controls? Antivirus and daily backups to the same network. That's it. Nothing else. Impact assessment? Systems down would stop all client work. They're an hourly rate business, so no work means no revenue. 72-hour outage would cost approximately £30,000 in lost billings, plus however long restoration took, plus client relationship damage. Likelihood? Based on government data, high. Their industry had even higher breach rates than the national average. Risk level? Critical. This needed immediate action. What did they actually do? Several things, none of them expensive. Change backup strategy to cloud backups that weren't connected to their network. Cost £200 per month. Implemented MFA everywhere. Email, file storage, admin access. Cost nothing because it's built into Microsoft 365 they already paid for. Scheduled quarterly security training. 15-minute sessions. Cost nothing but their time. Created a one-page incident response plan. Who calls who? What's the process? Cost nothing. Tested backup restoration and discovered it didn't work properly. Fixed it before they actually needed it. Cost a few hours of time. Total spend, including a consultant review, about £2,500. Compare that to £30,000 lost revenue from a 72-hour outage, plus ransom demands, plus recovery costs, plus client losses. The risk register made them do the mathematics. Once you do the mathematics properly, the decision becomes obvious.
So the risk register isn't the solution itself. It's the governance mechanism that leads to the right solutions being implemented.
Exactly right. And here's what's beautiful about this. Once you have the risk register working, you can actually track progress over time. Last quarter, ransomware was critical risk with minimal controls. This quarter, we've implemented offline backups, MFA, training, and incident response. Risk level now medium, still monitoring closely. Review again in 3 months. That's actual governance. That's what boards are supposed to do.
How do you get board buy-in though? Because that's usually where this falls apart.
You translate it into business language, not technical jargon. Don't walk into the boardroom talking about attack vectors and threat actors and zero-day exploits. Walk in talking about revenue impact, client losses, regulatory fines, insurance costs. That's language boards understand. Frame it as business continuity, not cybersecurity. How do we protect revenue if our systems go down? How do we protect client relationships if we have a data breach? How do we protect our market position if competitors get certified and we don't? Those are business questions boards can engage with. Use specific examples from your actual industry. Our competitor just paid £50,000 ransom and still lost 2 major clients. Could that happen to us? Let's find out. Make it immediate and relevant. Make it a formal board agenda item with time allocated. Not buried in any other business. Not delegated to IT to handle. Full board discussion with the risk owner presenting directly. Set crystal clear expectations up front. We're creating a risk register. Each of you will own specific risks. We'll review quarterly. This is board-level governance work that cannot be delegated.
What about businesses that genuinely don't have resources for this?
Then they don't have resources to survive if they get breached. That's the brutal reality I keep coming back to. Creating a risk register costs time, not money. If your board meets quarterly for 2 hours to review business performance, add 30 minutes to review the risk register. That's 8 hours per year total board time. If you cannot spare 8 hours annually on risk governance, you're not running a business properly. You're coasting and hoping nothing goes wrong. And here's the part nobody wants to hear. If you genuinely don't have resources for basic risk management, you definitely don't have resources to recover from a major incident. Recovery from serious breaches costs tens of thousands minimum, often hundreds of thousands. For many small businesses, that's not recoverable. They close permanently. The government statistic again, 60% of small businesses close within 6 months of a major cyber incident. 60%. Not scare tactics, actual government research. So when someone tells me we can't afford risk management, what they're actually saying is, we're one bad incident away from bankruptcy, and we've decided we're comfortable with that.
Framed like that, it sounds absurd.
Because it is absurd. But that's exactly what most boards are doing right now, whether they realise it or not.
What's your challenge to listeners then?
If you don't have a risk register, create one this week. Not next month, this week. Spend 2 hours. List your top 5 risks. Assess likelihood and impact using actual data, not guesses. Document your current controls honestly. Identify gaps. Assign ownership to real people with names. Then take it to your next board meeting and say, we need to discuss this properly. See what happens. You'll get one of two outcomes. Either you'll have a productive conversation about risk and actually start managing it systematically, or you'll discover your board doesn't take governance seriously, in which case you have a much bigger problem than cybersecurity.
I notice you're getting more forceful about this as we go.
Because I've spent 4 decades watching good businesses get destroyed by preventable incidents. That manufacturing firm I mentioned earlier that nearly went bankrupt? Good people, great products, excellent client relationships. Nearly lost everything because nobody at board level was managing cyber risk systematically. That's not bad luck, that's bad governance. And it's happening every single day to businesses that could have prevented it with a 2-hour investment in creating a proper risk register. Graham, where are you on this now? Because you started this episode telling me risk registers are overkill for small businesses.
I've completely changed my mind. You're right. Boards that don't have risk registers documenting cyber risk are being negligent.
Say that again?
Boards without risk registers are being negligent. And I started this conversation arguing the opposite.
What changed your mind?
The evidence. The government statistics showing 43% breach rates, whilst only 27% have board responsibility. The real examples of businesses nearly going bankrupt from preventable incidents. The legal duties directors have under the Companies Act. The fact that creating a basic risk register takes 2 hours, not 2 months. All of it adds up. But mostly, it was your point about the mathematics. If a 2-hour investment creating a risk register leads to implementing controls that cost £2,000, and that prevents a breach that would cost £30,000 or more, the decision is obvious. You don't need an MBA to understand that return on investment.
So what would you say to a board member listening to this who's thinking, this doesn't apply to us?
I'd say you're wrong, and you're being dangerously complacent. Cyber risk is business existential now. 43% breach rate means you're more likely to get hit than not. If you're not managing that risk systematically with a proper risk register, you're failing in your governance duties. And the consequences aren't theoretical. Real businesses are closing. Real directors are facing personal liability. Real insurance claims are being refused. This is happening right now, today, to businesses exactly like yours.
What about the argument that small businesses are too busy for this?
It's rubbish. If you're too busy to spend 2 hours creating a risk register, but you can somehow find time to recover from a major breach that costs hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of pounds, your priorities are completely backwards. You're choosing to be reactive instead of proactive, and that choice will eventually destroy your business.
Strong words.
You convinced me. Boards need to hear this, and they need to act on it.
Right. So here's my final message to board members listening. This is your responsibility, not your IT person's responsibility, not your security consultant's responsibility, yours. Governance is literally what boards exist to do. Cyber risk is now business existential. Accept that reality. Stop pretending you're too small to matter. Stop hiding behind compliance certifications. Stop delegating this downward and hoping someone else handles it. Create a risk register this week. Document your cyber risks. Assign board-level ownership. Review it quarterly. That's the minimum. Anything less is negligent governance, and when the breach happens, you will have nobody to blame but yourselves. The NCSC has published everything you need. Templates, guidance, examples, questions to ask. It's all free. The government survey data proves this is necessary. The statistics on business closures prove this is urgent. The legal framework proves this is required. There are no more excuses. There's no more room for ignorance. The information is available. The tools are available. The evidence is overwhelming. If you're not willing to do this basic governance work, resign from the board, because you're not equipped to govern a business in 2025. That sounds harsh, but it's accurate. Cyber risk management is now fundamental to business survival. Boards that don't recognize this are failing in their duties.
And that's where we're leaving this?
That's exactly where we're leaving this. because anything softer would be dishonest. This matters, it's urgent, and boards need to act. The good news? This is fixable. Start with a basic risk register. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Begin managing risk systematically. It's not complicated. It's just systematic thinking applied to business survival. The bad news? If you don't act, nobody's going to save you when the breach happens. Not the government, not your insurance, not your IT person. You're on your own. And when that breach happens, remember, you were warned. You had the information, you had the tools, you chose not to act. That's not bad luck, that's bad governance, and it's entirely preventable. Risk registers aren't bureaucracy, they're survival tools. Treat them accordingly.
Well, that was intense. And I'm genuinely surprised I changed my mind so completely during one conversation.
Evidence does that. When you actually look at the data, instead of operating on assumptions, the conclusions become obvious.
Where can listeners learn more about implementing this?
The NCSC website has everything you need. Board toolkit, risk management guidance, sample templates. All free, all practical. Visit www.ncsc.gov.uk and search for Board Toolkit. The government's Cybersecurity Breaches Survey 2025 has all the statistics we quoted. Also free. And if you need direct help implementing risk registers, that's what we do. Contact details on our website, thesmallbusinesscybersecurityguy.co.uk.
What's coming up next week?
Episode 32, our Christmas special. Yes, we're doing a festive cybersecurity episode. It'll be more fun than this one, I promise. Less confrontation, more celebration.
Looking forward to it.
Right, if you found this episode useful, and especially if Graham's journey from skeptic to believer resonated with you, share this with your board. Send them the link. Make them listen, because this conversation needs to happen in every boardroom in the country. And if you create a risk register because of this episode, email us. I genuinely want to hear about it. hello@thesmallbusinesscybersecurityguy.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Now go do the work.
This has been the Small Business Cybersecurity Guy podcast. Practical cybersecurity for UK small businesses. New episodes weekly. Stay secure. Right, before we let you go completely, let's have the quick chat about the boring but necessary legal bits. Don't worry, I'll make this as painless as possible. First up, and this is important, everything we've said today represents our own personal opinions and experiences. These views are ours alone and don't represent any organisation we work for, any employers, advertisers, sponsors, or anyone else who might be connected to the show. When we're giving you advice or sharing our thoughts, that's coming from us as individuals, not speaking on behalf of anyone else. Everything we've talked about today is for general guidance. It's meant to point you in the right direction, but it absolutely shouldn't be treated as professional advice tailored specifically to your business. Your situation is unique. What works brilliantly for a Birmingham bakery might be completely useless for a Manchester marketing agency. We do our very best to keep everything accurate and current, but let's be honest here. The cybersecurity world moves faster than a caffeinated squirrel. Things can change between when we record and when you're listening, so always double-check critical technical details with qualified professionals before you go making major changes to your systems. If we've mentioned any websites, products or services, we're giving you information, not necessarily giving them our seal of approval. We can't be responsible for what happens on their end, or if things go sideways when you use them. Some things we recommend might involve affiliate partnerships. We'll always flag those when they come up because transparency matters. Now, if you're dealing with serious cybersecurity incidents, actual data breaches, or gnarly legal compliance issues, please talk to proper professionals rather than just relying on podcast advice. We're here to educate and help you understand the landscape, not to replace your security consultant, solicitor, or IT team. Finally, and this is important, whilst we genuinely want to help you improve your security, we can't accept liability for any losses or problems that might happen from following our suggestions. Think of us as your knowledgeable mates down the pub who work in cybersecurity, not your official contracted consultants. We care about your business, but we're not your insurance policy. Stay safe out there, keep learning, and remember, When in doubt, get a second opinion from someone who can see your specific situation. Cheers!
Click subscribe and join the ride. Together we'll shield the digital tide. Your business is strong when your data's secure. The Small Biz Cyber Guy, here to ensure. Thanks for listening, we're signing off. Stay cyber safe no matter the cost. The Small Biz Cyber Guy says goodbye. Until next time, keep your day